Welcome back, Husker fans, to another episode of Generation Red, a very special bi-week edition of Generation Red, in which we are collaborating with a couple of other podcasts here today, joined by Bryan Knutzen and Kenny Cheatham, former Husker wide receiver from the Husker Army Podcast, as well as Fitzy from the Church of the Corn. And we cannot, well, last but certainly not least, we've got the Kool-Aid drinker extraordinaire, Mr. Redcast Rob, at Redcast Rob on Twitter, in case nobody missed that fun kerfuffle we had earlier the other day. Glad to have you guys here. There is no outline tonight, folks. We are the Kettle Corn of Husker Fan Podcast. We like to get a little salty, but we try to stay sweet. I'm your host, Ken. Of course, there's another guy here, I think, that hangs out with me, right?
Yes, I am the other one, the little crotch goblin that tormented my dad's life for quite a few years. I am Scott, the other host. Welcome to Generation Red bi-week edition. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on this endeavor, which is the end of the Scott Frost era and the beginning of new horizons that may or may not have wins in them.
There's a horizon. At least we're going somewhere. We may not know what that is yet, but at least we're going somewhere. This is an open forum, guys. I really don't have anything planned. So, Bryan, I think you maybe had a couple of other ideas of what you wanted to talk about on the show that we just finished. If you guys are watching this now and you're wondering what I'm talking about, we just hung out with these guys on the Husker Army Podcast. It's just finished recording, so that should come out. When do your podcasts drop again, Bryan? Is it Tuesday?
Nope, always Monday morning.
Drops Monday morning, which ours will too. So that'll be perfect. You can listen to theirs first and then listen to ours, and you'll kind of get an idea of the continuity of a conversation between six people who just have no hope anymore.
I think you're mistaken. I'm absolutely believing that we are going to go 8-0 from this point on. So
I love that. I love that.
I mean, like I said, we are 0-0 right now. This is Oklahoma game. Oklahoma game was like a preseason game for Mickey Joseph. So now we're moving into our 8-game season in which Mickey Joseph. I thought about your question, Bryan, that you asked me about like what Mickey Joseph needs to do. He goes 5-3 in these last 8 games, and he will secure that head coach job. They'll have.
I think that's solid. I think that's solid.
Yeah, I thought about it upstairs, and I started looking at the schedule some more, and the next 4 games are going to be a really kind of what is the show me state? What I Missouri. There you go. So this is going to be the show me schedule.
The kick catch. The kicker showed me something yesterday.
And for the record, I have not started drinking yet.
That was an extra point from old school. That was like
that was a 2-point conversion right there.
Put the ball in 7, kick it from 14, and he's. First of all, when he ran out and I saw how he was built, I knew it was a miss. Hey, Kenny, we all can't be wide receivers for the Huskers. Let's not judge kickers. I am the special team spokesman for the Church of the Corn. Look, Kenny, look at me. Look at me. What else could I do besides maybe kick a football through the uprights? Let's just be real. Be real here. I wanted to ask you that. I didn't know how much time we had on your guys' podcast before, but I want to ask Kenny, what are the players' mindsets right now? Obviously, Oklahoma was a little bit of a whirlwind. You know, there were comments from Garrett Nelson on, he's taking it all in, and then the Scott Frost part of it, and then he just kind of got through the week. What are those guys doing right now? Because obviously it's their name first. They've got to take care of themselves. So some might be looking at, other options. What do you think's happening there as a player, and how does that impact what happens with Coach Joseph?
I'm going to say, because we all know we had steady coaches back in my time there, and you guys know that was the thing Nebraska was. It was the coaches were there, and they were tenured there for a long time. So I can't say that I would understand what they're feeling, but I can assume the termination of Coach Frost was hard for a lot of them. And because regardless of EC being released, which was probably hard for some of the defensive players, but the head man being let go, that's heavy. And there was so much turmoil and so much pressure on them. I think the pressure on him was also weighing on them. Mm-hmm. And so it may have relieved some pressure, but I didn't think personally that they mentally recovered going into that week against Oklahoma. Now, we knew what was coming. Yeah. But we saw some things that I think we all can say that we said, oh, they gave up on that play. You know, like we said earlier, hey, the guy's still running end zone. You just start jogging.
Yeah.
Try to run it through and get it. But if Coach Joseph can keep them together, I think this bye week came at a perfect time because it gave them an extra week to reset. Hey, guys, this is where we can go for. Let's start the slate clean. Let's shoot for this. We need to all work together. The guys who are thinking about ways of being out and other stuff right now, if that's what they're doing, they should take it upon themselves to not even put themselves in a situation to play. Because if that's what you're doing, you're hurting the team. Because I'm sure some guys that would love to get that opportunity and be out there doing what they're doing to show the coaches, hey, I'm ready. But if you're just out there half-telling it because your mind is thinking of where can I go, what my future looks like as far as this because they let these guys go, then you're not for me. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're a you player. You should be trying to get through the season for your brothers that's lifting weights with you, that's working out with you, that's running with you, that's lifting weights with you, that's at the training table with you, that's in class with you, that's giving 1,000%. You should be giving that same 1,000%. So
this was the best. This was the best $15 million spent on this bye week. I mean, I mean, you put it in perspective, and something that I've been thinking about. I wonder, and I don't know if it's just cut and run type of thing. Is there any way that number gets changed because of what we're now hearing? That Trev had to have known, right? Does that stuff go into his contract as far as whatever it might be? Does that number change? I don't think it matters. I mean, those guys have way more money than me. I mean.
I think they would have had to point it out right then and there that they were doing it for cause. I think that's
a good point, Rob.
And I think that from a legal standpoint, you know, and just that just tells you maybe they were just like, you know what, have a nice life, buddy. Like, you know what I mean? Like you'll always be a Nebraskan, you'll always be a brother, but you know, like enough is enough. And I just feel like that was kind of what happened. I remember leaving the Georgia Southern game and my wife, and I always like to reference her because she couldn't care less about football. Like, and she will go to these games with me, and she'll attend with me, and she supports me 189%. And it's funny because we were walking out. I said, I'm gonna have to do a show tomorrow when we get home. And she said, why is that? And I said, because Frost is going to get fired while we're driving back from Lincoln, like from here to Colorado, you know, from there to Colorado. And she said, you think so? And I said, oh yeah. So then I get a phone call before it's even like on Twitter or anything like that. And I've talked about this already. I have her permission to bring it up. Oshan's mom called me and she was bawling. I mean, she was in tears and it was like, and it wasn't because as much of Frost getting fired, but it was about the way that her son was and for those listening, it was the way her son reacted to it when he called. He was bawling too because he felt like he had let Scott down. Because you know, and that was, and so Kenny, I'm just adding on to your point, you know, and that and it's true. It's like we don't think about the human element enough in these situations when these people get fired, when these guys get fired. I know for a fact too that Carol Frost at the end of that game walked by the press booth at the end of the game and she was in tears and she just looked absolutely distraught as well. And that's from the word of the mouth as one of the other Redcasters because we had media passes.
They were up there in the press.
Yeah. And they said they saw Carol go by and that she just looked completely distraught as she was leaving that game, you know? And so it's so much bigger than one person. And while all these guys go on Twitter and they cuss out Scott and they say all these bad things about it, there's like so much more to it that go into it that is going to affect the team down the line. Right. And Kenny, you made a great point saying like you don't think a lot of these guys were over it and this bye week couldn't have come at a better time because it really what it is going to do is it's going to show the true character of a lot of these kids coming in because they made it about Nebraska when they got recruited, when they came off the transfer portal, everything. It was like about I'm here to play for Nebraska, right? And so did you? I think should be the question, right? And I think against Indiana, if these guys don't come out with a fire lit under their ass like nothing we've ever seen before, if they don't just they have the offensive team right now to put up 45 points on anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
They have, all the defense has to do is let them score more than they score, right? And we can do that. The offense could be our best defense at this point, and I thought it would be against Georgia Southern, but no, So I mean, it was almost like there was a couple times at the end of the game where I was like, God, we scored too fast. Like, who says that? You know what I mean?
There's been a lot of times over those 5 years that I thought we scored too damn fast.
Yeah, and it's over, and I get it. Like, I'm all over the place a little bit here, but back to the human emotion of it is that, like, I think that I knew Georgia Southern was either make or break for Scott. Like, and I also knew that, like, if they barely won that game, there's still a chance that he might have been fired.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and there was a reason why they gave Mickey the associate head coach name before the season even started. The writing could have been any more clear. It wasn't even writing. It was like your favorite building in the middle of downtown. You show up the next morning and it's got a giant thing of graffiti over the top of it that says "Last Chance." You know what I mean? And everybody on every train coming to Grand Central Station or down to, like, Union Station in Denver, right? Like, you're gonna see it when your train pulls up. I mean, it couldn't have been more obvious. So, I mean, I think going into it, this eight game season that we're about to play, I think it's going to show a lot of character for a lot of these people. And, like, I like to say, so I run trivia nights, usually why I can't join you guys right on Sunday nights. But I don't have it tonight because the Donkeys are playing later on. And, and one of the things that I say at the end of every single one of my trivias is, because we call it quiz, it's Geeks Who Drink Pub Quiz. I say quiz does not build character, it reveals it. And it's from that old John Wooden saying where he used to say sports doesn't build character, it reveals it. And I think that Scott's Frost firing isn't going to build character, it's going to reveal the players' character, I think. And that's really what it's going to come down to. And Mickey is saying all the right things, he's doing all the right things, he is, living his life the way he is. Priscilla has been staying off of Twitter for the most part because she is now the head coach's wife, and so you can see that they have rallied, this team and their what so-called God, now I can't even think of the stupid thing, the stage coaches, whatever it is around them, right?
Circling the wagons.
They've circled the wagons around these guys as their head coach. Man, I just hope that they show it all coming up out against Indiana.
She hasn't completely stayed off of Twitter.
She but she's
for corn recipes. So
she
Scott,
did.
you'll appreciate this, that I told her about our macaroni, cheese, and corn that we eat at Thanksgiving.
Man,
so
I've got the best elote recipe that you could possibly have, man. I live in Greeley, Colorado. You want any Mexican food recipes? Hit me up later.
All right, bro. I will absolutely do that when I'm done with this stupid diet in like 5 years.
Oh, I can get you some good diet food too. So,
well, hell, I'm under 180 pounds for the first time since my 30s, so I'm pretty damn happy.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
And I'm tall and skinny anyway, but it was all here, right in the front.
Well, I'm not, but that's just because I'm jacked. I was gonna say I'm 178 pounds, but
I thought the same thing.
But I'm jacked. What can I say?
Last night's game, I thought to myself, I have the same metrics as Deuce Vaughn. 5'7", 170, except the fact that his proportions are muscle, my proportions are not
beer.
Muscle. We'll just leave it. Well, beer is pretty much whatever the weight in beer. That's what I
beer and bread. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Beer and
I
bread.
honestly not a lot of bread anymore. It's just beer and So anyway.
There's this guy I used to work with. His name is Ryan Benjamin.
There,
yeah, Brian's just hanging out. Like
he's just hanging.
We look so far away in that corner, though. It's like I want to bring you in, and
man, trust me, you don't want that thing any closer to this face at all.
I was gonna say, I got like some pretty cool Deadpool stuff behind you right now.
Dude, I'm telling you, Deadpool is my guy. This thing actually talks too. So,
my favorite movies. Both of them.
I've got a couple of like Deadpool. So Honky gets so mad at me on our show when I talk about comic book stuff, but I'm a big
shocker.
You can't see everything that's going on behind me, Brian. Just in case you don't know or you haven't paid attention, This right here is every single file cabinet in here. Those are short boxes full of comics that I've got going on.
Oh my God.
And every single one of these, they're in alphabetical order. There's also some boxes.
So Bryan, how do you think the last 8 games of the season are going to go?
Dude, if you want to base it on anything that we've seen so far, I don't think anybody has a damn clue.
Yeah,
I really don't. I mean, seriously, like you guys were talking about, these players knew that they were playing for Frost's job at the beginning of the season. You could see how tight they were all playing. And the hope was, going into the Oklahoma game, that some of that stress would be released. They could play a little more free. And who knows, pull off an upset for the century.
Well, they did for 5 minutes.
Exactly.
And it all went to shit.
Absolute shit.
Williams broke free. They all quit. It's like, what the fuck?
Don't even get me started on that damn play. I can't believe what I saw.
He did that to Kent State last night too, though. So I'm trying to find any way that I can kind of just lessen the
minimize it.
Yeah. Like he did it. Like, dude, I wasn't. You watch a Husker game with a different mindset, right? We all do. Right. Watching that game last night, and I'm like, damn, that kid is good. Like he's got a quick release. His first couple of steps, he's like, oh, and now here I am. Like he was a lot like Adrian freshman year again. Now I just cry because it was there, and that's the big thing, and that's why we're where we are right now. And Bryan didn't mean to jump in there, but he didn't get to fulfill what Adrian could have been. And
we also got to talk about Deuce Vaughn. I mean, that running back for Kansas State. Seriously, I got Barry Sanders vibes from that kid.
They showed the end zone view on one, and it was two times. 2 times, and it was. You're right though. Just squint your eyes a little bit, see a little silver and black. I got to go down to a Husker Oklahoma State game, and Sanders was playing down in Stillwater. Wow. And I mean so I'm just going to put this out there, Ken. I'm just assuming you and I are close. I know for a fact that Kenny and I are about the same age because when he played and I was down there.
I think I got you by a couple of years, brother. But yeah, go ahead.
That's all right. But those we're talking Peyton, right? We're talking Sanders. We're talking Thurman Thomas. We didn't call it. I know this is almost getting like porn right now, but it's
Hartley Dykes. All those guys.
Yeah, we didn't call it a jump cut back then. It was just they made
ankle breaker.
Move. Like it was just.
It was a juke.
That's how you ran, though.
It was a juke move. Yeah, it was a juke move.
Do you guys remember a kid out of back in the day, University of Pacific out of California, out in Stockton, had a kid that played for them right before I think they disbanded their football program, and it was right before Nebraska played them back in like 95 or 94.
We played them 94 and 95.
Okay, so there was a kid right before there. His name was Ryan Benjamin, and he was a running back for them, but he was an all-purpose back, right? And he's actually a friend of mine. I worked with him in Santa Rosa, California for a while, and he was living out there. That's where his wife is from, and I was talking with him because I was like, oh my God, like he was the all-purpose yard leader in the nation the year that he graduated, and he was basically an undrafted free agent to the Bengals, and he ended up playing special teams and doing some punt returns and kick returns. If he was a back today, he would have been like the premier guy out of the backfield catching passes in the West Coast offense. But when he graduated, pretty much Bill Walsh was still the only one running the West Coast offense back then. So, it's just too bad. Like, you think of some of these guys, and Sanders was like something special. He came after that, but Benjamin had that all-purpose yards leader in college football for Division I for a couple of years before Barry came around.
There's no better highlight reel on YouTube than Barry Sanders at the Detroit Lions. Better highlight reel.
Does anybody remember a video? Anybody remember a VHS tape from way back in the day called NFL Rocks?
Yes.
I've got them. Sports Illustrated, all these things. I've got them in a box. Yeah.
4-minute video on Barry Sanders alone, and it's this remix of calls of him making moves. It's ridiculous. I based the way I ran in football off the way he did. I mean, it was ridiculous.
That's hilarious. It reminds me of those that was like the same time as like the NBA videos, right? Where it's like you've got like Sean Kemp and Michael Jordan and all those guys. Like, what was that guy from Cleveland that was with all their slam dunks and everything?
LeBron James, Rob.
No, this was long before LeBron James. There was a
Larry Nance.
Space Jam.
Larry Nance.
Larry Ness, but there was another guy too.
His son's on the Bulls, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He used to be.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. He was. Where'd he go? Like Kentucky or Kansas or somewhere like that.
Yesterday was the Yesterday was the anniversary of Vince Carter dunking in the Olympics over the. I can't think what team it was, but it was that dude. They transitioned. They intercepted an outlet pass, and he just went over, and he just over, and it was crotch shot over the.
All in his face.
Here we go again. But things were better back then. Kenny, can you agree?
Yes.
Sports things were better back then. I mean,
so Kenny, let's talk about, because I don't really want to talk about what Mickey Joseph has in front of him for the next 8 weeks. I'd like to talk about the end of that Missouri game. Dude, you played a huge role in going down the field. What was it like? Were you nervous? Were you crazy scared? I think you made 3 or 4 pretty big time catches, didn't you?
No, actually, Ken, we weren't surprised by that game. And I've said this on a Riff and Raff with AD. Prior to that game, if you guys can recall, in '97, I missed the Akron game. Preseason, we're running plays. I'm blocking down the field, and Makovica rolled up on the back of my ankle.
Oh, so damn, I was there. I remember that.
So I had a high ankle sprain, and at the same time, I had a quad strain. So that whole year in '97, that's why I wouldn't start some game or miss some games, is because I had a quad strain that started from the back of the knee and went all the way up into my hip by the Orange Bowl. Like, I was getting cortisone shots like every game, and some I had to, Coach Osborne would hold me out. I still have it because it would build a scar tissue, and then it would just strain at the next spot and go all the way up. So Coach Osborne called that game in summer, in fall camp. He literally said, we're going to go undefeated. Our closest game is going to be against Missouri. You know, he says Missouri. He said against Missouri.
Missouri, yeah.
He said, we know their quarterback is good. They mirror our offense.
Yep.
They mirror our defense. So it's going to be as if we're playing against ourselves. So we knew going into it what it was going to be like. But if I'm correct, I think we may have played Oklahoma or someone before, and he pulled me out of the game. And he said, I'm pulling you out. We're going to need you next week. He said, the game is going to come down to you. And first 1 or 2 plays, I'm going to try to get you into the game to send them a message. He said, because they can't do anything with you.
Right.
He said, but the game is going to come down to you. So at the end of the game, I was like, he called it. Let me go out here and do what my coach asked me to do. So a lot of those routes I caught that were low, they were deeper. But, you always hear when you watch NFL and college, well, the receiver should have cut it off earlier to get the ball, that type stuff. That was processing when we were lining up. And if you go back to the film and watch the game, you can see Missouri coach saying, watch number 6. Watch number 6. If you look, he looks my way first. But they had another guy over there. And then that's when he goes back to the backside because the call was to my side. Okay. So, we weren't nervous about it. We were more – we knew after the game immediately, they're going to find a way to jump us in the post. That was our thought. Believe it or not, we weren't up. We were like, they're going to find a way to put Michigan because they want them to get the championship. They're going to try to
yeah. No doubt about that.
Anyone else have chills listening to that and seeing it? That is
Kenny,
amazing.
I have to make a confession. I did not see the end of that game.
Did you leave and turn like everyone else?
No. I was living in Arizona. Scott might remember this. He was about 2 or 3 years old that year. I was living in Arizona. We were part of a really big church down there, and they were doing a church plant out in East Mesa, and we were going to be part of that. So they'd always have prayer meetings on Saturday evenings at like 6 o'clock or 4 o'clock or something Arizona time. So there I am. Listening, I watched the first half at a local Husker bar, and I didn't drink because I'm like, well, you can't pray and have beer on your breath. So, so I come home and I'm listening to it in earbud. You remember them old school foam?
Oh yeah! Oh my
God! You put on your head with the foam on them that bit into your ear after about 42 seconds. I had figured out how to take the element out of that and stick it in my ear so nobody could see it except for the wire. And I had it going down the back of my shirt, whole 9 yards, till the wife noticed it and said, turn that off. Just as we're walking into the prayer meeting, that was when they punted back to you guys and you were going to have to go on that last drive. So I had no idea how that game turned out until I got home that night, like 3.5 hours later. And I couldn't believe it. That was back when you had modems, right? You dialed up to the internet and you heard the 56K baud modem. I mean, I thought I was the bee's freaking knees back then. And it took 10 minutes for the internet to load. And I'm like, Miracle in Missouri? What the fuck are they talking about? A miracle in Missouri, right? So, yeah, then I watched the video and I was like, holy cow, this is something else. I can't believe I missed this. And then I got mad at my wife and she looked at me and she goes, do you really want to be pissing God off right now?
Ken, I think God would have understood, man. I think.
Well,
check this out. My parents was leaving the game.
Oh, shit.
Oh, no.
Oh, no way.
They were leaving the game. And my mom said to her, catch by Cheatham. You're like, what? And she said they all started trying to run back. So they missed the last part of it. They missed all of it.
Oh, damn.
They were like, oh, my God. They're going to lose this game. And so she said they started leaving, pissed off. And then she started hearing that over the thing. And then she heard,
oh, man.
Like, the hell? And come in to find out. I said, oh, you missed it. I said, what a good supporter you are. Told her in my dad.
Thanks, Mom.
That's the thing as a Husker fan. Never leave early. I mean, seriously. I was at the 2015 Michigan State game, and I was there with 3 other friends. They decided to take off with, I think it was like 6 minutes or 5 minutes left. We were down 12. I'm like, I'm sticking around, guys. This ain't over. And we all know what happened. I mean, granted, yeah, we got one to go our way, but it is what it is.
The issue, though, is I was a freshman in college in '95 down on campus, and there was a lot of other things going on that were probably way more important than Huskers. But we had the luxury of those teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we could leave. We could sometimes leave at halftime and come back in. Other times we could leave at halftime because it was like you might as well just get the party started because you knew what was going to happen. We're talking 4th, 5th, 6th stringers playing the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And so leaving early then completely
no big deal.
Yeah. I didn't feel guilty about it. And and then it was the moment, Halloween-ish. Texas lost, Ricky Williams, that whole thing, and you stay. But those are the games you're staying for anyway. But it's not, But
was that my senior?
And that's the
would have been 98. I was at that game.
98.
Yeah.
98.
I was sitting,
I think that's your senior
we
year,
were up
wasn't
behind
it?
the band. I'm telling you what, the feel of the stadium was so eerie. It was the first loss at home, and I don't know
since
the
91.
Yeah,
40 some games, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's just you get that, but you knew it was bound to happen, and things like that. But and I know we talked about this last week on Art, and I talked about it's the process. People lament and people will say, don't talk about the 90s, don't talk about the 90s, don't talk. But Kenny, tell me if I'm wrong. There was a process to the 90s, right? And the process equals production. And it wasn't who you had necessarily. It was what you did with what you had. It was the structure of the practice. It was the structure of, here's the deal. You're now held accountable by these guys. I've said this before. We were freshmen, sophomores. We'd cross the street on O Street because we did not need to or want to walk face to face with the Peter brothers. I mean, that's just how it was. And that's but there was a feeling, right? There was an aura. There was a methodology to what you guys were doing. And there's nothing wrong with getting that back right now.
Right. I think a lot of guys, I saw someone say something on Twitter the other day. They were saying, "Oh, they always." It's funny to me that everyone, not you guys, but people always say, "Oh, everybody wants Nebraska of the '90s." No, we want Nebraska of the '70s. We want Nebraska of the '80s, and we want Nebraska of the '90s.
I'll take 2000. I'll take 2001, 2002.
Stop putting. It infuriates me. Stop putting us just in the '90s.
Yeah,
because you've been blatantly disrespectful to the teams in the 70s and the teams in the 80s. It was 40 years of handing people their asses. So, excuse my language, but when they say,
no, you're good.
As a 90s player gets offended because you're omitting the scoring explosion and all those great teams they had in the 80s. And you're omitting the 70 and 71 team and all those teams they had in the 70s. So you're just saying, I 3 championships, but you're omitting all these great teams for 40 years. We were the bar of college football, period, point blank. There's no other way you can say it. We built programs. We built Miami. We built Florida State. We're the reason pretty much the Orange Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl is here because ASU success they had, a couple times beating Nebraska. So we built a lot of stuff in college football. That's why a lot of people are envious and they have a slight jealousy or a little hatred toward.
They love seeing us down.
So, the 90s thing, there was a certain way we went, but that was based off the guys in the 80s. That was based off the guys in the 70s. Yep. So put us all in there. So, without them, there wouldn't have been us with that blueprint.
Right.
Coming from Coach Devaney in the 60s. You see what I'm saying? To his championship. So that's a long run. That's why it's 40 years. So,
Whoever the next, and whoever the next coach is, you just said it right there, Kenny, has to make a blueprint, has to find a blueprint of what's going to be. I don't care if it's the wing T or they're running a veer. It doesn't matter to me. Whatever they can be successful at, you recruit to that. You recruit to that scheme. You recruit to that system. You get the coaches that know what they're doing and guys that are wanting to play. I keep thinking about, I think Bryan was talking about earlier, just the defense coming out and, showing up in the angles and stuff. It's one of those like, okay, now I'm thinking from yesterday, whomever the player from Ohio State was wearing the fancy cleats. I'm showing my age right now. And
Marvin Harris Jr.
Yeah, and then had the eye watch on, right, while he was playing, and they eventually had him take it off. But I'm thinking right now what the Huskers have to do, it's that image of I'm taking rings off, I'm taking necklaces off, I'm telling my buddy to hold this, I'm holding my phone. And it's because it's it's scrap time. They've got to get after it. And it's got to be more than just wearing. It's just, you know what? Make a mistake, but just make the mistake at 100 miles an hour. Hit somebody, tackle somebody, get a foul, whatever it is. But the thing that sticks with me, maybe I can't imagine I'm the only one, but that whole thing of no fear of failure, right?
Right.
It's just the apprehension, the skittishness, the just and now all of a sudden, here's where they're at. I think guys got to – because you're now at the point, though, where we're going to see second teamers more often, right? They have to go out there and just play. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Good thing.
Right. Yeah, at some point you have to let your pride kick in. Because, like I said, we have to be honest. We live in a generation where there's so much more access to – look at the kids, criticize the kids and all this, but we have to understand. I tell people all the time, those are kids. I got to Nebraska, I was 17. I was 17. They still call me young Ken C. I was literally 17. My birthday was during tour days. We reported earlier because we had the kickoff classic that year in '94. I was 17.
Yeah, that's right.
So
West Virginia.
They were like, you're only 17? And I'm like, yeah. They were like freshmen. They were like 19 or 18 going on 19. I'm like, well, you guys must have flunked kindergarten or something.
Hey, Kenny, it's called in 2022, parents call it red shirting their kids. So get an advantage on sports. I'm not even joking. Like, the ages, it's called red shirting in kindergarten. I'm
like, hey man, you just had to color between the lines. How did you mess that up? That's not hard. At some point your pride has to get kicked in. I know a lot of times, I hate to say it, but I have to say it. If you don't want the criticism, stay off social media. Don't look on social media. Don't have a social media page. Yeah. But you obviously want the attention. That's why you're on there and you're doing the things that you do. You're posting everything that you do. Oh, thank you, coach. Got this offer at this job. Oh, look at this. Oh, it's game time. Look at us. We about to do this. You're putting it out there so when people are going at you, expect it. But I just say to the kids, which goes back to that, they have so much emotionally invested in Coach Ross, like we had in Coach Osborne and our coaching staff.
Yeah.
That goes back to that week when he was let go. Boom. That's a gorilla on your chest. Then who knows what the defense players have with EC? You know, their connection to him. Boom. That's another gorilla on your chest. Okay, this was the week to push that gorilla off your chest and man up. So, but I mean, Nebraska's Nebraska, like I said, and hate it or love it, guys. Not us, but new players, future players. You're going to be compared to the 40 years of dominance that we had. Let's not even bypass Pelini's team. Let's not bypass Coach Solige's team. They were 9-4. Even though they weren't in the big championship game, they were 9-4. So
every year,
not that far removed of winning 9 games, being in, 9-win teams. What was missing was the dominance, and the bad losses we had taken hurt, the Nebraska image, and I would say brand on that. But 9-win teams, there have been statues. I tell people all the time, your school will have statues of that coach. He win 9 games for 5, 6, 7 years in a row. You'll have 7 streets after him. You'll have a drink, a soda, a burger, a shot. Why are we guys for that? They're terminating guys in the league for that. But
you just described everything in Iowa City, Kenny. You just described everything in Iowa City.
Bryan, you got anything to add to this discussion, dude? What do you think?
I'll tell you, everything that's going on with the program, I just want to see us get back to it. I mean, I really don't care how it's done. I don't think the way we used to be in the 70s, 80s, 90s, that style of football was not going to work here anymore. So we need a complete overhaul once again, just like what happened when Callahan came in. I don't know if anybody remembers what the tunnel walk looked like when Callahan was here, holding up a blueprint for Nebraska football. What a shitty blueprint that was.
You don't have to worry. You can drop an F-bomb on our show, man.
I don't normally, but yeah, there are certain times. Yeah, it was the shittiest blueprint I'd ever seen in my life. Now, as far as a blueprint coming in, I mean, look, it's going to be completely different. I like the way Mickey's talking. He's slowing down the offense. That's exactly what they need to do. You need to give that defense time to rest. And for God's sake, let the sons of bitches fucking just go out there and do something and make a play. Turn them loose.
Yeah.
Could you guys imagine this offense with last year's defense?
You can say that
be here.
Second time we've had that in a decade. Whereas, like, if you were to take the 2010 offense and put it with the 2009 defense, like, God, we've always had this weird
one or the other
overlap.
is really good.
Yeah. That's all I've known.
We totally flipped the switch, and I'm sure you all can agree, because what I said last year, I literally counted one series. I think me and Bryan talked about it on the podcast. I think we ran 3 plays in the matter of about 35, 45 seconds with the punt. The defense was back on the field.
Yep.
So now we have the offense, but we don't have the defense. And I know it's hurting Fitz, Rob, Ken, Bryan, we all did, and it's sickening because we're like, it's not making sense. How do we regress so badly? Did those 2 players or 3 dispute?
Deontay Williams Doman was a big loss.
Yeah. They made much of a difference that we would regress that much.
Yeah,
and it's just mind blowing. It's just boggling because how we saw Georgia State going up and down the field was like, oh my God. And then the Oklahoma's, but let's X that one out because we understand what happened. I mean, I really wasn't expecting. That's why I said I'm watching the game today. I didn't even watch it.
We've had 2 preseason games this year at least.
But the Georgia Southern one, the Illinois one, I'm still in the haze, like Rob said. Who said it? Was that you, Rob, that said it earlier? Still trying to figure out the Illinois game?
Yeah.
Northwestern. Still
I was at the Illinois game.
Yeah.
I was at the Illinois game.
I'm still trying to get through Illinois last year when they said, they had an odd number front. What were we going to do? What the?
Hey, Fitz, let me tell you, I was at that game and I was sitting 3 rows off behind Illinois' bench. And I was probably, and I shit you not, I was probably, me, Honky, and Mac were 20 feet away when Oh God! Now all of a sudden I'm horrible with names. But when he stepped back into the end zone, catching that kickoff,
Britt,
Britt. When he caught the kickoff and stepped back in the end zone, and I was yelling from the sideline, "Don't catch it!" Because I could see him like looking like he was about to catch it, and I was yelling, "Don't catch it! Don't catch it! Let it go! Let it go!" I was yelling that from less than 20 feet away, and still, it just blows my mind. And I was thinking, like, oh my God, where is the discipline with this team? Like, that's a simple football play right there. That's the sort of thing that I could probably tell my 15-year-old who's never played a down of football. And if I could just tell him, like, hey, if the ball's within the 10-yard line and it's kicked off to you like that, don't catch it. You know what I mean? Like,
you taught that in Pee Wee football. Heels on the 10.
Yeah.
Yep.
Stand on your heels are on the 10. If the ball goes behind you, you leave it.
What it's going to be.
And you run the opposite direction from the ball. Get away from the ball. No, let's just catch it, step into the end zone, and then throw it out of bounds. Let's just do that. Let's
go ahead.
I got it. Well, I was going to say, I got a question for Scott. You're the youngest one here. Hello, Scott. How are you? What is this? How old are you?
28.
28. That's kind of what I was
28
figuring.
again.
No shit.
I know so much more and can drink so much more. I mean, I would have been amazing at that time. I would have been like that girl at Maryland. No, the girl on Twitter the other day from Maryland who was standing on a table, crushed a beer against her forehead, open it, and drank it. Like, she's homecoming queen. She's my hero. Like, she can come be our nanny, whatever she needs to do. So, but what is this? What is this like for you? Because obviously you understand where we were coming from. Your dad, of course, growing up through it. I can remember Husker moments from being a kid, just like I'm sure you can, but those are obviously different. How do you connect to this team? How do you keep the resiliency and I guess the fandom? Because I use the example of being around kids and in Omaha, College World Series and stuff, and I was a teacher for a long time. Kids would come in, and it's a different hat after a Super Bowl every year, right? Like, you just had a Saints hat on, and then now this year you're wearing the Bengals cap or whatever it might be. But the hats, a lot of Texas fans became because of the College World Series. How did you stay a Husker fan, and what does it mean to you as you're at a different generation than we are, i.e. we're old. Bryan, you might be in this boat too. I think I am. You look about what, 33, 34?
I wish. I'm 40.
Oh, wow. Good for you. See, I need to back my camera up. Do I look younger?
That's what I'm saying, man. You put that camera back a little farther, man. It just, nobody can tell. Nobody.
I'm going to go stand in the other room. I'm going to go stand in the other room then.
How old do you guys think I am? That's what I'm curious
72.
about. That's pretty fucking close. I'll be honest with you.
I was going to say about 35.
37, Rob.
I am 48, years old.
What?
Yeah,
I know. It shocked me too.
What can I say, man?
I 38, 39.
48, 45. Kenny?
46. Just turned 46 in August.
Yeah.
Happy
I was going to say, because I was already out of college. Let's see. I finished college in 96.
Oh my God.
So, yeah. And that was at a small, I went to a small liberal arts school in Northern California called Sonoma State.
That's that?
Yeah. I mean, Larry Allen was there. He was there when I was there at the same time. So we had one Hall of Fame football player, figured that was it, and they canceled the program.
On top.
I'm not even joking. Like, the year after he left, they disbanded the program, and that was that. Yeah.
That's our ceiling.
Much like Nebraska is a volleyball school, we were a soccer school anyway. So we had national championships in men and women's soccer.
Mm-hmm. All right, Scott.
Yeah.
How do you do it? Like, you haven't seen what we've seen, right? I mean, I wasn't around in 71, but I was close enough. You start to hear it, and the effort you had to put in to watch games in the early 80s in a neighborhood, somebody's garage, one TV, that something like that. How are you doing it right now and people your age?
All right. So number one, I do credit my dad. He did a really good job. Watched VHS videos all the time growing up.
Extra points,
and 95 national championship videos.
Bonus points. You can make him cry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there was a lot of that. And then there wasn't much of, like, we didn't really have cable, so we got to watch whatever primetime game was on the top 3 medias. And so I loved football growing up. I thought it was fun. I'd play with the neighborhood kids. And all I knew was that the Cornhuskers were the greatest goddamn team on planet Earth. And that's how I was raised. And as I kind of grew up and grew more, I have vague memories of, okay, Bill Callahan's hired. My dad's pissed. And then I start, dad just starts talking about, he's on like this Husker forum and he's like, we're getting this recruit. We're getting this recruit. We're getting this guy. We're plugging this guy in. And I'm just listening. I'm just in the background listening. And, there was the name Ndamukong Suh that I just couldn't figure out how to say for a year or two. and it just slowly but surely, I started to just understand the illustrious history of Husker football, notably because my dad was so pissed off all the time that we sucked. And I wanted to know why. I was just like, what, we're the greatest team ever. So I was watching every single game with this like ignorant understanding that we were just supposed to win all of these games. And so we lost and we lost and then we won and then we won. And it was just this back and forth. And it's just this idea of a blueprint and a fundamental Husker power and what made the greatest 4 decades of college football history a possibility was exactly what you guys were describing earlier. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily the X's and O's. It's what's in between the 2 shoulder pads on an individual basis. What's going on in their heads, and what do they think about themselves? What do they think about the team? What do they think about the culture? What do they think about every single tiny little nuanced decision that they make? That's what made Cornhusker football amazing, and what Nick Saban replicated. And, Nick Saban sat in the office with Tom Osborne and was like, how are you doing this? How have you sustained this level of success? And was like, well, this is what I did. And Nick Saban took with it and ran with it and adopted an Alabama team that was down in the dumps for about 20 years and made them an absolute double dynasty. They had Bear Bryant, and then they moved to Nick Saban, and he revitalized that program and brought them back to an insane level of proficiency.
You mean Nebraska? I mean, are you trying to tell me that they haven't always been good down there in Alabama?
Yeah, isn't it crazy? They kind of sucked for a while there. Were they 3-9? Were they 1-3? Were they ever
for quite a few years? Yeah,
they were bad.
They were really bad.
It takes the right coach. Yeah.
Scott just said a lot of stuff that I think people underestimate when they hear you guys and us and talking about the culture. Alabama has a culture.
Oh yeah,
that is identical to Nebraska. Clemson has a culture that is identical to that of Nebraska. People have to understand how we were held accountable by everyone who played in that locker room before us.
Yeah,
we could have easily omitted anyone except the 70 and 71 team criticizing us that played in that uniform. But out of respect and the culture, we knew the work that they put in to get that program what it was. We weren't doing something right. One of them said, hey, Ken, you need to do A, B, C, D. Okay. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, oh, man, they trying to live off here. You get what I'm saying? So when your dad is bad, he understands because he's seen that culture. It was nothing for them to call us when we didn't play well.
So I've heard some stories too about guys from your era too, where it wasn't always peachy keen, where everything wasn't always sunshine and rainbow, unicorn farts. It was there wasn't a single player on any of those teams that didn't at one point think about transferring, right? Or leaving the program and had to be sat down. I mean,
they kicked out of school twice.
Yeah, you know what I mean. It's like in every single player back then, and God, I can't imagine what it would have been like with the transfer portal the way it is today, right? You know, and it's funny you guys are talking about VHS tapes, and I've got these 3 games. Kenny, I'm assuming you're on. One of them is the December 31st Orange Bowl in '96. Again, how often do you get to play two bowl games in the same year, too? Right, because the other one was on January 2nd against Florida. And then the Colorado game in November of that year, right? November 29th and 96. So I've got all those on VHS right here. Man. I just need a DVD or a DVD player. I need a VHS player to play them on. So
Rob, but that goes to, and Kenny, what you were saying, those guys, you were upholding the standard that had been set, right? And to that point where you get what you tolerate. The former players, your coaches, your teammates weren't tolerating anything, but the other side of it is early to mid 80s, Tom Osborne recognized with his coaching staff, hey, we're going to all these bowl games, but we just can't compete in certain positions. So what did they do? They got faster at corner, right? They got, different stuff like that. I haven't seen, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm looking at it with a different lens, but I haven't seen a coach yet other than Pelini did it for the Big 12, but it hasn't happened yet in the Big 10. Of finding the types of bodies, finding the types of players. They got a little bit, felt like they got closer last year, felt like they were okay this year, and now it's the coaching part of it. I think that's the big part that's missing is that the culture, the standard, what the expectation is never changed from Nebraska from 60s, 70s, 80s, but the recognition of the coach to say, you know what, here's where we're getting beat. So let's bring in playmakers like yourself. Let's bring in bigger, faster, stronger corners because it's not just run, 3 yards on a cloud of dust anymore. And that's what I know this is a long way to, but that's kind of what I'm hoping for the next coach because we know what can be. And it's not Oklahoma. Oklahoma had a bad few years and guess what? Stoops brought them back to the promised land. Alabama was down and they had the right coach. And guess what? Their first 5-star Julio Jones, and then all of a sudden he brings a couple more. That name, that production, and now look where they're at. It doesn't.
Dude, Michael Booker looks like he could still play. You know what I mean? Like I saw that guy at the spring
Book
game.
was a bad ass.
That guy, he still looks like he could play. I mean, those are the type of guys we need for the team.
Yeah, like for me, it was what I see personally. Because I know everyone talks about like bodies and stuff like you said, Fitz, for the size of the players in the conference. One of the weak points for me, not saying that it's the players, I would like to see us have that monster in the middle at backer and those hybrids on the corner. That one that could have been a big safety but fast enough to play linebacker that can cover. To me, at times we look like I'd say the old Nebraska, a little slow at foot. At the linebacker when we're playing Miami and Florida State in that bowl game, and that's getting exposed. You know what I mean? Secondary has been getting guys. This year they just need to refocus. Like I've said on our podcast, stop all that yapping and show us more than telling us what you're going to do because you're getting scorched. The numbers show it. We're not making it up. But our biggest, as we all can attest to as Nebraska fans, myself as a former player, but I am a fan. We haven't seen the animals that we were used to on that front four. That is a Nebraska staple going back, 50 years?
At least.
That you can point to, even over 50 years, and say, boom, we saw the nastiness as a lineman as he got better. Cam Jurgens got extremely good, but that viciousness, we haven't seen that as far as on the lineman, the nastiness, the bullies, the bully. Hey, you know what you expect when you got to play Nebraska in their O-line. That's what it is. And that defensive line, going back to that, you know how many legends played on that line that in conversations from before we were born?
Yeah.
Come on,
no doubt.
I mean, you look at some of that and you look, Hall of Fame, because that's so-and-so. That's the one who used to talk to me at. That's, But there was
I
get who you were talking to. you know, and Jacobson. Oh God, that's hell. He was almost more heralded than Glover. You know what I mean? You sitting there.
Yeah.
Hey, it's humbling.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It humbles you, but we haven't had that. I would say Gregory, that we had a monster where you just said, "Ooh, you got one." You know what I mean? You really got one.
Yeah.
But Sue, of course, is who he is. But I mean, as that end, but as those people where you say it's gonna be some pressure on their head.
Yeah.
And we know what's coming. Now we're like, oh, we got a sack. Whoa.
Isn't that frustrating though? Because doesn't it seem like Mathis and Nelson have that in them to do
Mathis
that? But they haven't. They've got a chain on their ankle right now, and they can only go 6 feet in circumference.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not letting them. They're not letting them go. And I'm wondering, maybe hoping, but does Bush just say,
turn them loose?
What do we have to lose? What do we have to lose?
Fuck it. Yeah.
Like I said, I love Mathis's game.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Always there. Like I said, like a lot of stuff I said, he's not getting the sacks that he got at TCU, but he's disruptive. He's around the plays. Mm-hmm. But if the others aren't helping him in that front in the manner in which we would like for them to help him, because they can focus on him because they know what he brings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They know what he brings. Hey, we know what this one is. If we keep the other ones at bay, and we can kind of keep him where he's disruptive, but not being as disruptive as he could be. So, I mean, it's hard. That's hard to watch. We've all probably been saying it for the last 4 years, maybe 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Rush.
Is it too much? Is it too much to ask for? I mean, this is going to be sarcasm, but is it too much to ask for a blitz? Is it too much to ask for a surprise blitz? Is it too much to ask for the defensive lineman, maybe the ends coming in and sitting in that gap, right? Just to give a different look. I mean, it's flat out. All right, time to line up 4, 3, whatever it is, right? It's just there's no tactic. It doesn't look like there's no.
When your corners are playing 7 yards off the ball and you're playing a too high shell with the safeties, it's awfully hard to blitz.
Well, and your linebackers are 7 or 8 yards off. I'm just saying
because they know it's coming. And they know they've got all that room in the middle of the field that they can hit. So,
I get it. All of that depends on the initial pressure that those interior guys can give. That's where it has to start.
Why
we're not going to have to worry about that too much against Indiana, though, as far as like the passing game goes, too. So that's why I'm kind of excited to see what they might bring as far as the defense goes. Because
is this back to Big 12? Is this Big 12? Carl Pelini days?
Well, I don't know, man. Like I said, it'll be interesting against, Rutgers, too. You know what I mean? They aren't the best offenses, either one of those. I mean, so. We'll see. Well, I can't believe I'm going to be at the Rutgers game, right? I'm going out to New Jersey.
From Colorado, you're going to New Jersey.
I am. Well, my sister. So my sister lives about a 15-minute. Yes. Yeah. There's weed legal everywhere, man. My sister lives a 15-minute train ride from however you say it is, that where Rutgers is at. So
Piscataway. Learn it, Rob.
Piscataway. Well, I better say that too, because I think I actually have a media pass. I think I actually have a media pass for that game too. And so,
hey Rob, I'll send you a Google map. Don't worry if it sends you to Newark. Don't worry about it.
I've been to Newark before. Changing from one train to the other there to get over onto the path, which takes you into New York City. So I'm familiar with the area pretty well. And I have a media pass for that game. So that's going to be a lot of fun because I'm going to go down and I'm going to try to broadcast from the field the night before the game. And then because it's a night game on a Friday, right? And then I'm gonna try to get over to the press conference to actually ask a question. Okay. So see if you can hear me or not on there if I get to that point. That's Dave and Boomer didn't want to get to the press conference there, or at least ask a question there. I'm gonna have a list prepared. So if anyone wants to send me a question to ask Coach Joseph in the press conference after the Rutgers game, win or lose, I'm more than happy to take submissions for that. And I may
on Twitter. You're DM on Twitter.
I don't care. Yeah. Just send it over to me, DM or just
send it to Honky. He'll get it. Send it to Honky. He'll get it to Rob.
Yeah, because nobody. Yeah, just tag the Go Big Redcast and just mention me and don't throw my Twitter name on there or anything.
Oh, fuck you, Rob.
Oh man.
Hey,
Kenny,
all right.
Kenny, I got a question for you.
I got one after.
Real quick. Do you think today's players coming out of high school can ever get back to the point where they understand what it meant to be accountable and be that level of player that Nebraska needs? They figured it out at LSU a few years ago. They've obviously figured it out at Alabama for the last, 15 years since Saban has been there. Do you think we can bring a coach in, or Mickey or whoever it's going to be can convince dudes to come here and do what you guys did back in the day, which the blueprint for success is still the same. The offense doesn't have to be the same. Hell, the defense doesn't have to be the same. But the blueprint should be work hard, hold each other accountable, and stop with this shit, when you make a play on defense as a defensive back, meanwhile, the fucking team's dropping 600 yards on you. Do we have guys now that we could recruit that are going to be willing to submit themselves to the team? Fuck me. I don't care about me. I want to submit myself to the team. Do you think there's kids out there that are willing to do that?
I think there are, and I'll explain it. We are living in the me generation, like I said, with all the stuff. Look at me, everything's so accessible. Look at this. I call a lot of these young kids walking emojis, because a lot of them can't even hold a conversation because they text and the emojis and all this stuff so much, and half spelling words and all of this, that you really get them. They're not really as social as they could be. But I think to have that with this environment that you just described, Ken, you would need a person like a Nick Saban. I'm saying this other name because I know people start throwing in the media, but the a-hole coach, the Saban, the what's my buddy, the crazy Urban Meyer. Oh, I'm just throwing the name, but don't put it in coaching. I'm just saying that type of, it ain't about you. This is what it's about. Because Nick Saban don't play. You saw what he yelled at them boys after that Texas game when he was going across that field. He went, but don't. They know better. You don't hear them. Remember the one D lineman was talking stuff about Kyler Murray a few years ago? Yeah. He nixed that. That's what you need, because you know what? That's saying it ain't about you. It's about the team. You don't hear about his guys. Now you hear about some of them doing foolish stuff after they leave and go to the NFL. But while they're there,
why you got to hate on the Raiders like that?
I did it on purpose. While they're there, you know what I mean? You don't hear about that individualism. Right. It's about roll tide, and this is what we're playing for. We're here for championships. When we entered Nebraska, we were playing for championships. We weren't hoping to win. We weren't saying, "Oh, maybe this." No, we expected to win. It was championship or bust. That's what he has. So those guys, you can't get them. What coach would be able to handle them? You know what I mean?
Well, and that's what's painful for me, Kenny, as a guy that drove to frickin' Wood River from Grand Island back in the early 90s to watch Scott Frost play. And I thought when he came here that was going to come back. I thought the accountability was coming back. I thought the whole idea that team above individual was coming back. And then 4.5 years of it, I'm like, where the fuck's the accountability? Yeah. There's none.
Some of these kids need tough love, but a lot of them aren't willing to accept it. Coach Osborne didn't have to give us tough love, but we respected him so much that we didn't want to let him down.
Yeah.
Coach McBride gave tough love, but they respected him so much that they didn't want to let him down and the defensive coaches down. You had a guy like Coach Samuel give you the sharpest back. Everybody well respected. Everybody loved him. He didn't give you tough love. He showed you love, and you didn't want to let him down. But then you had the opposite in Coach Steele when he was there, who was a hard ass, and he'd be on you, but it was tough love. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Coach Young, Coach Timber, tough love. They were hard on those, but they showed you love. But you wanted to not let them down, because the culture wasn't a me culture. It was an us culture. It was accountability. We would check one another when we were out of pocket. Say, bro, what's going on? You know, hey man, you gotta go lift weights. Oh no, you're not doing that. Hey, what? Lawrence checking me when I was a freshman. Hey, bro, You go into class, I'll be there every morning to pick you up in summer school.
That's cool.
You go be in the gym. My freshman year in spring football, I worked out with Lawrence, Clinton, and Damon. I was with running backs. No, you go be in, you working out with us.
Mm-hmm.
It's accountability.
Yeah.
Are they willing to have accountability? But that goes to, like I said, so many distractions they have now. But when we were together, hey, we lived together. Now they don't have to really live together. They don't really have to socialize with one another outside of football practice, and that's it. But us, we all lived together. We hung together. We partied together. We got in trouble together. Everything we did, good or bad.
Yeah.
Offense and defense, right? Like, was it offense and defense? Because now
everybody.
Because like I'll give you a perfect example. I talked with JoJo over the summer, and he had roommates, but they were all offensive guys. And then it's like I talk, and they're like, oh no, we don't really hang out with the defensive guys. You know what I mean?
We all hung together. We all hung together.
So,
we might have had and it was mixed roommates. But then the Nebraska culture overall, not just with us, but all the other sports, we all hung together. Basketball, track, volleyball, softball, soccer. We were like this. Like all of us, like, hey, what y'all doing over there? But football-wise, like my roommate was Octavius McFarland and Chevin Wiggins. So you had defense, 2 offense. We used to laugh at the numbers. You had 4, 5, and 6 standing together in Warfield. But you had all of us. We were all together. Then over at the other house, we go around the corner. It was Rucker, Jay, it was Foreman, Ortiz, Marcus Johnson, who played the O-line. You had Book, Jamel, but you had Tyrone Williams, Barron Miles, Jerome Peterson. There, you had we mixed magic. Clinton doing with Clinton. It was Clinton Tony Veland. But we were friends. Yeah. So that accountability, holding each other more accountable, was even harder on one another because we were friends. No, you're not sitting at home and I'm up here handling my business.
Yeah.
Come on, bro. We rolled together. We did everything together. So I say, good, bad. We were all together. But it was accountability. But we would need a strong coach. And this isn't taking anything from Coach Joseph. I'm just saying in general, to deal with today's players and have that no nonsense attitude. And they're going to listen to Coach Saban because guess what? He has the hardware to show it.
Yeah, he does. No doubt about it.
How can you dispute this when I have this to show you? Here's my track record. Here's what's being drafted. Here's A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. You know what I mean? That's hard to dispute. It's hard to dispute.
So Bryan, I got to ask you something. How cool is it that you get to sit and talk to Kenny all the time?
Are you kidding me? When I first had him on, it was the Scarlet and the Cream Husker podcast.
I remember that. Yep.
I'll tell you what, I fanboyed so hard because I never thought in a million years growing up being a Husker fan, I would be doing something like this, interviewing a former Husker that I watched on TV, that I admired, loved watching play. And it just kind of got to the point where me and him started talking. We hung out in Lincoln after the Michigan State game one year, him and Terrell Farley, and got to talking and exchanged numbers. And literally it butted into a friendship that I never in a million years would have thought my ass would be in.
Yeah.
That's
So
cool, man.
having Kenny host with me in a podcast, I never thought I would be doing this. So, I mean, Kenny gets a hold of me randomly here and there, tells me some funny ass shit, and I'll tell you what.
This is big for me because we're talking because we're on a podcast.
Yes, sir.
I talk because I'm on the Husker Army podcast. Generally, I don't talk. I'm my standoffish. I'm looking at you like, I wasn't really a talker as a player. I go about my business. Coach Brown would say something. I'd be like, all right.
Yes, sir.
And he didn't know how to deal with it because I'd be like, oh, okay. I'm not a rah-rah guy. I'm not a, let's go. No. Oh, yeah, man. They would laugh at me. I'd be like, man, let's go here and get the business handled so we can go.
You're an observer.
I got things to do. So Bryan asked me, I was like, oh, man, let me look at it. Then I was like, yeah, man, let me just get on there and talk. Get me out of my shell a little bit, man, because I'm an introverted extrovert. Talk to you guys because we're here. If we were out somewhere, I would talk to you guys. But I ain't gonna be talking to everybody else in the play. We would all be shooting the breeze if we were somewhere having dinner or lunch or something. But everybody else, whatever you're talking about, I ain't trying to hear. But so man, I appreciate it, man, and I love coming on talking with you guys and other podcasters because it's cool to hear other perspectives of what you guys are seeing in regards to the program and the feeling, how you guys are feeling about it. Because we all take the hit. Some of us might take it a little bit deeper because we played. But
you were there.
Same hit you're taking and being lifelong fans, trust us, we're just as nauseous. And we get all of the harassment by other people. Oh, what's up with Nebraska? Oh, so Colorado, but they ain't doing nothing.
So,
dude, let me tell you, it is beautiful. Like Colorado State both losing because I don't have to hear it. Hopefully, the Broncos totally shit the bed tonight, so then I don't have to worry about listening to their fans because it's Bronco week now. The Raiders are playing the Broncos next weekend.
I love exactly where your head's at, Rob. I really do.
Yeah, me too.
Man, I am me too. Hatred for Colorado that the only time I root for anything out of Colorado is when Colorado State plays the Buffaloes, and I will root for Colorado State. Anything after that, the whole state can kiss my ass.
I'm a Northern California kid. My mom's family is just from Gothenburg, and that's how I became a Nebraska fan. And I got dragged into this by Redcast Dave, and even more so. Like before, I was a fan. Now I'm like a super fan, I guess. Yeah. So that's Dave's fault, But
well, let's get into that. Because my story is a little different from most Nebraska fans. Your story is a little different from most Nebraska fans too, Redcast Rob. So why don't you let everybody know why and how you became a Husker fan?
Man, it was like growing up as a kid, my grandfather was from Gothenburg, and he came out on a train from Gothenburg to Northern California, where he pretty much worked in the shipyards up until his retirement. And, Nebraska games were just always on TV. I've always been a family guy, spend time with family on the weekends, extended family as well. And so the games were always on in the back. My Uncle Bob, rest his soul, he was really into it as well. And so the games were just always on, and I was a fan, right? So like if they were on and I was watching the game, I was always rooting for Nebraska. And then I moved out to Colorado in 2008. And then long story short, after my divorce, I actually met Dave's wife, Katie. She introduced me to Dave. They started inviting me to come watch games with them on the weekend because, I had enough Nebraska roots for them to like put on the red with them right on the weekends. And we would go to this small, this like dive bar in downtown Denver called the Gigglin' Grizzly, and they're a Husker watch site. And I would watch games with them there. And then on the weekends, even when they would travel back to Nebraska, I was still going down there by myself to watch the Husker games, and it just got to that point. And then they started doing the podcast, and, that's a whole nother story. But I kind of got, asked to help them out with some stuff on there. The pandemic hit. So then they were just like, well, why don't you just come on and hang out with us tonight on the show? And now all of a sudden here I am, like, doing my thing every single week with them and doing all that, doing interviews with players and, former coaches. One guy you may have heard of, Kenny, Coach Tom. And it was, and so it's just been kind of a whirlwind the last 14, 15 years of being a Husker fan. And it's funny because everyone's like, oh, we've been terrible for 20 years. And I'm thinking to myself, at the end of the, like even 2 years in the Callahan era, which I don't like to talk about him, especially as a Raider fan, but then going into Pelini, we were like only one of like 5 teams. Like we had like one of the top 5 records in all of football for like an 8 to 10 year period, regardless of like Callahan's last season. And then going into Pelini and, right before he got fired, it was like, they always had 9 wins or 10 wins. Right. And they had one of the best records in all of college football. They just can never seem to win the big game. Mm-hmm. And so we haven't been down for 20 years. Like all these like revisionists want to put us. We just needed something to get us over the top. And, I don't know if Pelini would have been that guy. Anybody could have been better than Riley. And admittedly, when Riley got hired, I was like, oh man, we're going to start bringing in all these West Coast kids. He's got all the West Coast connections. I'll admit I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about.
The Calabrasca.
And then now here we are going into the Big Ten, and I'm thinking, okay, in retrospect, since Nebraska fans are good at revisionist history, when Frost said, "Oh, we're going to make the Big Ten adjust to us," I should have known from that point on it was over. Like I should have, because nobody's gonna change, the trenches. Like that's what the Big Ten is. That's what the SEC is. That's the difference maker in the entire thing is, it's all about the trenches. And and you can't bring in these small guys that aren't as big that are just moving around for play action passes and swing passes and circle passes, and you just can't do that. And we're gonna have to. I mean, we've got a rebuild project coming up here real quick that I just. It'll be an interesting thing to see. Can we just talk too? I would love to see more of Kevin Williams on the offensive line. Am I the only one here? I was watching him against Oklahoma when he was in there a few times, and I think he even started. And he was pancaking dudes in the run, like the first 5 plays of the game. Go back and watch those, because Kevin Williams is not exactly the hardest guy to make out on that offensive line for reasons, And let's just say he's the only non-white guy on the line. All right, and
he's got some melanin differences.
Yes,
definitely.
But you watch him on those plays though. He is pancaking dudes off of in the run game, especially running to the right. And I'm like, why isn't he out there more? Like, what did he do? Who did he piss off to do that? Because he came from Northern Colorado, right? He lived here in Greeley for 4 years, and I talked to him over the summer, and he's and everyone was saying he's going to be the guy to keep an eye on the offensive line. Maybe we're going to see more of him moving forward, because we saw him against Oklahoma. It'll be interesting to see, because that kid can open up some holes. He can, and you watch. You're going to start seeing some guys running over him, run. And when I say running over, I mean through the holes he creates. So it'll be an interesting thing to see. And I'm sorry, I kind of got off track. That's what I do. Dude. As far as my fandom, but
you're good. You're good.
It's I'm in it. I've been in it pretty hardcore now for the last 15 years. Before I was a casual fan, admittedly. But I needed a hobby after my divorce and Nebraska football. You know what I mean? You can't say that I jumped on a bandwagon. I'll tell you that much.
I hope this isn't. Yeah. I hope this isn't too offensive to say, but it was one bad relationship to another.
No, because in all fairness, too, I've been a Raider fan my entire life. I've been an Oakland A's fan my entire life. I mean, hell, up until recently, I'm a Golden State Warriors fan too. And let me tell you, man, I sat through some years where
me too.
They had some teams in the Bay Area where there's a funny story that I had that Paul Silas was the coach of the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, I remember that.
And my family, we had season tickets about 10 rows behind the visitors bench back in the old O.co. And there was a game where there was hardly any fans there because it was the Warriors versus Charlotte. And right. I'm just and this is early days of the internet. So I'm looking up players and all these stories about them and I'm yelling stuff during a timeout at Paul Silas about this and that and his days at Georgetown and everything and right in the middle of a timeout, he finally just stops, looks up at me in the stands and goes, and to everybody in the whole arena and goes, "Are you done yet? Because I got a game I got to coach here." And I thought to myself that if that doesn't tell you how much crap I've had to put up with as a sports fan for my entire life,
not surprised,
I don't know what else.
Yeah, the Warriors story is funny because I've been a Warriors fan. The new ones, I like to see them win, but I like players. But I go back to 1987.
Okay.
Eric Sleepy Floyd, because I don't like.
Yeah, oh my God, I love Sleepy Floyd.
Because I don't like the Lakers. So when he went off of that game, I was like, "Who's this guy?" One of my favorite players of all time, even when he was in college, was Chris Mullin. So
that's funny.
And my favorite left-hander is Sarunas Marciulionis. So I'm a true Warriors fan from back then. With Chris
That's funny. I'm a big Tom Tolbert guy because I was a big fan of the 86, 87 Arizona Wildcats. That's when I started watching a lot. And Tom Tolbert was on that team, and now Steve Kerr is obviously the coach of the Warriors, and he was on that team. And I was a big Atlanta Braves fan because everybody was back then, right? Everybody, because they were the only other team outside the Oakland A's that was on TV every day.
Yeah.
And And so Kenny Lofton, was on those teams as well. So yeah, that's
I think Neon Dion was even on some of those teams back in the day.
In the Atlanta. Yeah, but like as far as like University of Arizona and the for the basketball. So if you see me ever tweet out about them, U of A, I'm a U of A basketball fan. I actually wanted to go there coming out of high school. My sister is an alum of there.
Okay. I was born and raised there. Born and raised. Kenny, you're from Arizona.
Yeah, you're from Arizona too, right?
Phoenix, I was born and raised there, man.
Phoenix, born and raised.
Yeah, born and raised in Phoenix. I became a Husker football fan in 1983. So I had a buddy of mine that was pretty high on the Huskers. He said nobody was going to be stopping Turner Gill, Mike Rozier, and Irving Fryer back in the day. And then when they go to that Orange Bowl against Miami, and Dr. Tom calls for the 2-point conversion at the end of the game because he figured if you're going to win a championship, you should win it on the field, not leave it up to voters. And from that day on, I was a Husker fan for life. My wife moves to Arizona from Nebraska 5.5 years later. She meets me, and I tell her I'm a Husker fan. All the other boys circling her at church had no shot at that point. So here I am. I'm now a Nebraska fan. I've been a Nebraska fan for life. I always will be. Bryan, why don't you tell your story? I know you were born here, right?
Yes, sir. I was born and raised.
Turn my camera back on. Hang on. Go ahead.
I'll tell you, it was right from birth, honestly. My dad, come to find out, named me after a player on the Huskers team at the time, and for the life of me, I can't remember who the hell it was. He just said his name was Bryan, and he goes, "Here you go. That's going to be your damn name." So, and from that point on, I honestly, my earliest memory really is the '84 Orange Bowl where Tom went for the 2-point conversion. And it sounds crazy, but I was, not even 2 years old. So my dad recorded every single game because he worked sometimes on Saturdays. So I would be able to go back and watch all these games, even in sheer boredom. Right. And I would put those in just because I was bored and wanted something to watch. I probably wore out the 92 Colorado game on Halloween night in Lincoln. I mean, I was able to fast forward through commercials and stop it right when the commercials were over. It was ridiculous. And it's been ever since. So I was fortunate enough to grow up in the 80s, the 90s, and get to appreciate what this program really has shown people it's all about. And it frustrates me so much because guys like Scott, you didn't get to live through that. You didn't get to enjoy all that. And it truthfully pisses me off because I know what this program's about. I know what they can do. I know what this brand stands for. And we are light years away from what it once was. But as far as my fandom goes, man, you could never shake my faith. You could never, ever get me to stop rooting for Big Red. There ain't a chance in you would. You know what? Screw you. Even if you kill me, I'm still rooting for these guys. Yeah, I don't give a damn. I'm rooting from beyond the grave. So I want my ashes scattered at the 50-yard line, for God's sake.
Yeah. Well, Kenny had to go apparently.
No big deal.
You know,
I gotta get moving on here pretty quick myself.
We do too. My grandkids are all back there in their mom and dad's bedroom with my wife, trying to keep quiet so it doesn't come over the.
Are those Scott's kids? Is that
no? That's Amber's kids. My oldest daughter. Okay. Next one older than Scott. We're in Virginia. I'm in Virginia right now, Rob. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Virginia's beautiful, dude. Absolutely beautiful. So we're heading up to Pennsylvania tomorrow to see some of my family on my mom's side. And then we'll head back to Nebraska and hopefully start hauling some RVs the week after we get home. So I'm hoping to get tickets to the Indiana game. The wife and I are hoping to go. So I know, according to Trev, there's still a little over 1,000. So Rob, Bryan, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you on social media, starting with you, Rob.
Oh, you can find me at Redcast Rob on Twitter, and then at Go Big Redcast. Obviously, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. You can find the Redcast on Twitter. Sorry, I don't do Redcast Rob on Facebook. So, and throw me a follow if you feel like, following a complete ass.
Yep. In your favorite podcast app, just do Go Big Redcast. You'll find those guys, and it's one of my favorite Husker podcasts. It always has been. Way before you started on the show, Rob, I started listening to him back in early 2018 after Frost was hired. And I went all the way back through the 17 season to listen to what they had to say back then. So, and I think that was their first year. So, yeah, you guys have not had the luxury of covering a winning football team. Neither have we, but obviously we've only had to deal with the misery for 16 games now, Scott. So,
yeah.
Brian, how about you? Where can folks find you?
We're pretty simple to find. I mean, Instagram, Twitter, at Husker Army Pod. I suppose if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Knutzen_Bryan. I don't do a whole lot as far as my main page goes, but I like to just stick with the Husker Army page. I guess you can follow me on Facebook, Bryan Knutzen. Really just post on the Husker fan pages there, especially Husker Army fan page, of course.
Go ahead, Kenny. I mean, we're doing kind of the whole how to follow everybody. So unless you had something else you needed to add to the conversation.
Oh, no, brothers. Sorry about that. Cox Cable gave me the business for a couple of minutes. But
it's
call it Cox for good.
It's all good. I get it. I'm doing Wi-Fi myself, and that can be spotty at best. So
just saw on Twitter at Husker Noob, HUSKR NUPE 1911. And that's where I'm at. I talk a lot of trash on there sometimes. Somebody get on the skin. I have to give them a heat check.
Yeah, I threw you a follow today.
I'm on here talking crazy, but I'm there for the people.
How about you, Scott? Where can folks find you on social media?
Yeah, for those who are not watching the stream, I've got a Twitter handle at ScottGenRedPod. You guys can just follow our page on anywhere that you follow social media that are the main social medias, of course. We're not going to be in like those weird, smaller platforms that are not well supported by the mainstream. Yep, you can follow me on Twitter. I just stick to Husker stuff there. So give me a follow.
Yep, absolutely. You can find anything and everything about our podcast at genredpod.com, which would also have links to our social media, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So make sure you do that. And of course, do a search for Generation Red on your favorite podcast app, and you will find our audio-only show in case you prefer your podcast in audio form. This particular show will be available as of 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, as well as the special recording we did with the Husker Army Podcast earlier this afternoon. So, you know what, folks? This has been an absolute blast. Kenny, Brian, it's been an honor to have you on the show. Redcast Rob, damn it, dude. It's about fucking time we got to hang out. It's timing is everything. I love this, man. This is so much fun.
I felt obligated, honestly. I felt like I owed it to you guys. I really did.
I'm sure you do.
A million times.
I'm sure you felt horribly obligated and guilty. And
hey, I logged in the StreamYard like 20 minutes early, dude. All right, like I just had to go upstairs and get something to eat. So
it's all good. And thanks again to Fitz from the Church of Corn podcast for dropping in for a while. We're going to hang out with them again sometime in the future. He and I have been talking since we've been on here, so that'll be cool. And for everybody, thanks so much for watching. My name is Ken. He's Scott. Together we're Generation Red, and we're here to remind you that no matter what anybody tells you, I'm not going to say it, Scott. I'm going to leave it up to you. For me, fuck Iowa. There's no place like Nebraska.
Yep, Iowa's corn sucks, and go Big Red.
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red, kids. Love you guys. Thanks for dropping on, man. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Later.